Awesome. I think we're good right now. We have over 60 participants who've joined, and we have with us our speaker for today as well. Welcome, Aditi.
Thank you for us.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And just to give you guys a heads up, a little bit about a little bit about the community, a little bit about Aditi's profile, and then we dig a little deeper into, a little about her journey into product management. She's pretty early, so she'll share some nice tactical tips with you on how to get into product management. And then any of the questions you guys have to ask her, please feel free to put it in the chat section, and I'll be sure to pick them up towards the end. So without further ado, a little bit more about the Product Folks. Product Folks is a community. It's a volunteer-driven community of product managers, of aspiring product managers, product marketing folks, product design folks, and just product enthusiasts who just come together to help the community grow together. We have a bunch of initiatives in Sergio.club, which is an early stage APM program. We have Learn PM with .me, which is a bunch of curated resources for those who are looking to break into product management. We do monthly events now. I think there's one every week since we're all locked down. And yeah, that's about it. So if you guys have any inputs, feel free to DM us. We'll be happy to help. um, Over to you, Aditi. Do you just want to share us something very interesting, a very very small TLDR into your life to begin with?
Sure. I currently work at Bounce as a product manager in the customer experience team. And previously, I worked at Rapido. So far, it has been a great journey being a product manager. And I started my first job as a product manager. And like since college, I was very passionate about it. And I was happy that I got to start my career in what I was very interested. I graduated last year from SRM University. It's in Chennai, and I majored in electronics and communication. Yeah, that's
Awesome,
pretty much about me.
awesome. So you just broken in. What made you pick product management as a career?
I remember when I was in third year of college, I was doing my summer internship in Zoho as a software engineer, and like the entire experience was amazing. However, I found this missing piece where I wanted to do the ideation part of the product. I used to come up with a lot of things that by if we did this, then what would be the impact to the customers or the end user of the product. And even though writing code was gratifying, it was not as satisfying as making products or making something from scratch which would delight the customers. So that is
Okay.
something I found missing, and I started looking in the internet that what is this role. I didn't even know the name, actually, the term product management. And I started looking up in the internet that is there any such role where I can do, like, I can actually model an entire product the way I would want it to, the way it would make others happy while using it. And yeah, that's how I came across product management. And since that day, I've always been doing things which would help me pursue this career.
Awesome. That's nice. Two questions there, just as a follow up. One is your textbook definition of a PM, something that you realized when you wanted to shift to now that you've worked, 6 months in Bounce. What is the difference? Is it similar to what you read about when you wanted to transition? Or do you think, there is a slight mismatch, maybe?
Okay, first of all, I don't know who is this person spreading this term everywhere that product manager is the CEO of the product, which excites everybody, every kid, college student kid, that, wow, I can be a CEO of a product. But okay, that's not true. That is not at all true. Certainly should have, all the attitude, all the behavioral and leadership skills which a CEO has, but you are not a CEO of the product or, your team or anything like that. A product manager's job is more of a facilitator. You are the glue between all the teams. You have to make sure things everybody can do what they are good at, they are best at, with ease. And you are able to bring the best product out of the team with your efforts. So it's like you basically have to bring everyone together on the same page, bring alignment, and that is what the role of a product manager comes down to. It's not about you going and telling engineering team or design team what to do. It's more about enabling them to tell you what could be done in the best way. So yeah.
Got it. Got it. Fair point. Fair point. Digging a little deeper into the meat. So at Bounce, how does your day to day as an APM really look like?
So I would say each day is different. Each day is exciting. So day to day work looks like interacting with engineering. So it starts with for initial time when I have to research on the product I'm working on, productize it basically. That time is invested in doing a lot of research, understanding what customers want, talking to stakeholders how they feel about the current product and what is their opinion, so that it doesn't come as a surprise to them that oh, where did this idea come from. So it's a lot of communicating and talking initially, and
Hmm.
then once you have um, product ready, that you have say a PRD ready, you have a document ready, you interact with engineers and designers and take their opinion. You have a concept note ready that okay, we are thinking of doing this. You do a like formal meeting where you interact with each of them and understand that am I thinking in the right way, or make an environment where they could challenge my opinions. Because so it's not always that what I have thought or whatever approach I have taken is the best. So
Hmm.
making an environment where each of the teams, say business, strategy, design, or engineering, each of them can question me, and the feedback I get from that is again used to iterate on the productization I have done. And yeah, once everybody is aligned, we start working on the product, and then I'm always interacting with the developers, asking how it is going. Are there any challenges they are facing while writing the code,
Hmm.
in terms of any clarity which is required. So yeah, that's pretty much of
Awesome.
my work. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. Fair point. Fair point. Um, I think a lot of questions are already coming in the chat section, so I think I'm going to like stick a little lower on my set of questions. A couple of questions that I can already see are around. Okay, you broke into a good. I mean, like Bounce is a pretty well-known startup, and without any like right out of college, right? So, what are some things that you did there? How did you upskill yourself, or that transition? How easy was it? What did you do exactly to get into a PM role?
So as like I said earlier, I was reading a lot on the internet that how to get into product management, and how easy it is, how difficult it is, what are the skills required, and there was no answer which would satisfy me. And
Mm-hmm.
like end of the day, I had no approach, no answer to how to proceed or pursue this career. So I was clueless. I came to Bangalore. I had my last semester free for internship, so our
Mm-hmm.
college gives that allowance. And I was interning in a company called Leadsquared as a UX engineer. And yeah, things were good there, but obviously it was not the career I wanted to pursue. So I was still looking out for product roles. Then around March, when my internship ended, I had plenty of time and I was still in Bangalore. I didn't have to go back to college. And I was clueless, once again, without a job offer. I didn't know what to do. And I was desperate to get into product management because I really loved the field. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, obviously now I love it more because I'm actually working as a PM, but back then also I was very passionate. Um, so what I did was that I had started observing the how blue collar jobs were evolving in India, and specifically because of players like Swiggy and Zomato. Like these kinds of delivery executive jobs didn't exist when we were children, and now in Bangalore,
Right.
wherever you go around, you just see delivery boys, Swiggy, Zomato, Dunzo, Uber Eats.
Right.
So I thought, since I have so much of time and I want to understand what their job looks like, because so many products are being built around, these professions. Even Rapido is something very similar. Obviously, the
Mm-hmm.
goal is different, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I started talking to, delivery boys, and I started pseudo delivering with them. So basically, I used to follow them throughout their day and see how their day goes like. And literally I was working pretty much like a delivery executive, uh, following them, seeing what are the challenges. I still remember once Uber Eat guy got a location which was incorrect, and like both of us were searching around the area for the correct location, and it took half an hour, and then I realized how frustrating this job is. So this
Nice.
is something I could have never figured out if I was just sitting in my room and
True.
finding something on the internet. Right. So this while I was doing this, I met one of the Zomato delivery guys who took me to a cafe, and I was interviewing him, and he was telling me about what are his aspirations. He was basically working as a part-time delivery guy, and he was telling that he plans to, with the money he earns, he plans to open up fish manicure business. So, which was very surprising because like we coming from such good backgrounds don't
Yeah.
aspire so much. So that was something amazing. And while I was talking to this guy,
Huh?
I met Rapido's co-founder in a cafe, in the same cafe, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how I got into Rapido. I got a
Sweet.
chance to present this entire research I did on
Sweet.
delivery guys.
Sweet. You were doing this without any motive, right? When you were doing the pure interest, or what was the idea? Did you actually plan it out?
No, so
Okay.
yeah, this was just out of interest. Like I said,
Okay.
I had nothing to do in Bangalore. I
Yeah.
was bored, and like boredom brings out a lot of
Yeah.
good
How many
talent.
delivery guys did you like tailgate or? Yeah.
22, yeah.
Nice, nice,
So,
good stuff.
you know what?
Huh?
If I can share my screen, I'll
Please,
show
please
some
do.
of, yeah.
Please do. Just let me know if you need, and you can. Do you have any problem accessing? You can
No,
share your
I
screen.
can access. You
Awesome.
guys can
Yeah, I
see
can
it.
see it. Yeah.
Yeah, so these were some of the insights. This is the original deck I had shown to Rapido's team. And these were some of the insights I had got from, talking to delivery guys. So
Mm-hmm.
what is exactly that delivery guys need? What are the things that matter to them while they are working? Because even for a delivery executive, there are a lot of choices. They can work as a Zomato partner. They can work as a Rapido captain. They can work as a Uber Eats driver. So they have choices. So what do they prefer, and how do these companies incentivize on these metrics to
Mm-hmm.
increase their supply? So this was one of them, and obviously so just a second, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
sure.
partner pain points, like this is something I would have never understood unless I spoke to the delivery executives. So
Interesting.
again, like no resource in internet would do justice to talking to customers. There's nothing greater as an experience you get when you talk
Awesome.
to customers. And
Awesome.
the so this is Venkatesh, who I
Mm-hmm.
had spoken to, the person who wanted to start fish manicure as a business. He's
Uh-huh.
just 20. He's a BCom grad. We usually think that delivery executives come from a background where they are not educated, but this guy was a BCom grad, and
Mm-hmm.
these are some of the points about what why he was doing the job, how much he could earn,
Mm-hmm.
what outcome he was expecting out of it. So this is again something, like I am repeating on this point, that
Yeah.
you have to get out of your room and talk to people, understand real world problems. No book
Amazing.
and no resources can teach this thing. So this is something really worked for me, and after
Mm-hmm.
this experience I've always encouraged myself and my peers to talk to customers. And it necessarily doesn't have to be customers you are working for. It could be anybody. It could be a friend who is a customer of Swiggy. It could be a friend who is using TikTok. So you'll get a perspective that what actually happens on the customer side. You
Mm-hmm.
can get a great product which is great to you, but it may not be great to a customer. So yeah,
Fair
this
point.
is like one of the things that I
Amazing.
realized while doing it. And yeah,
Nice.
worked well, even though
Mm-hmm.
it was not with an intention.
Okay.
But yeah, like if you put exponential inputs, you get exponential output. And that's
Super.
exactly what happened with me.
Awesome, awesome. So, I mean, this is great. I think something that is a little hutke, if I can say. But what did you do after? How did you even like? I mean, like maybe Rapido. Yes, you met him at the cafe. How did bounce happen? How did the interview call come through?
Okay, so I approached one of the product managers at Bounce, now my
Mm-hmm.
colleague Sid. I
Okay.
messaged him on LinkedIn, and
Awesome.
he forwarded my profile to the senior folks there.
Through
And
referral.
then, yeah, then I had 3 rounds of interview. The first
Okay.
round was a phone call,
Mm.
which was only about my past experience and about me basically, and why I'm interested in the role. And the second one was a written assignment, which I had been given 2 to 3 days to complete that. and
Hmm.
the third one was a final round. So yeah.
Okay. So would you want to go a little deeper? Written round, what is it? Was it like a case study that you need to do, or did they ask you more about your UX experience? Did they ask you tech, design, data, anything around those?
Yeah, sure. So the written assignment was about demand supply of marketplaces and
Hmm.
how what approaches could we take to match bounces demand and supply. So yeah, a business oriented question, not design, not tech.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you go about approaching this problem, especially like a lot of engineering students might not know the basic of. Okay, today there's lots to read about, around marketplaces too. But how did you go about solving this? Did they give you, like, was it again research on the internet? Was that good enough? How did you go about this?
So the leverage I had here was my past experience at Rapido. So I knew
All
how
right,
marketplaces work.
fair
I
enough.
That was one thing, and of course, so the thing with bounce is, so in case of Rapido, if you compare, the driver is the supply,
Huh.
and the customer is the demand. But
Hmm.
in case of bounce, there's no driver. So essentially, the scooters are the supply. So how
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
match demand and supply, that is the challenge here, because you just have one lever, you can control your demand, but if you have to increase supply, it just means dropping more scooters in the city. So
Capex. Yeah.
that is a tricky part here. Bounce is a one-sided marketplace, while
Interesting.
Rapido is a two-sided marketplace. So yeah, but yeah, that was a fair advantage I had, that I understood how marketplaces work, how the demand supply works. So yeah,
Hmm.
that is one thing that helped.
Super, super. And like, yeah, just the second part of the question was, as a PM, do they need to know how much do you think, tech, data, design, what amount should they know, at least for an interview and for a role?
So about tech, you don't need to know what code to write or how to write it, but you should know enough of tech that you can communicate with engineers. So the language they speak shouldn't be alien to you. So like there's this joke between me and my colleague that if a PM knows what an API is, then the PM knows enough of tech. So yeah, but don't just go and read about what API is. I mean, what it means is, if you really, so most of the time you are, as a PM, you are just talking about APIs and how stuff is interacting with the, how stuff is being rendered in the front end, or how stuff is interacting with your, you know uh, basically your front end part. So essentially, if you understand basic things, or how actually programming works, if you break it down into blocks, and how each of the blocks are talking to each other, it's like a Lego block. So how each of them are talking, and what actions happen when any kind of triggers are made. So if you understand basics,
Yeah.
it's good enough.
Would you want to take an example there, maybe from Browns or Rapido? In any example that you can share, or a real life one, if you can share it on a call?
Uh, Sure. So, for example, you want a user to, fill a form with certain details.
Hmm.
Now, a PM who doesn't know tech would go to an engineer and say, just make a form, and where customers can fill the detail,
Hmm.
and that's it. Like, you wouldn't talk about trade-offs of using different approaches, but a PM who understands text would probably uh, you know uh, propose something like, why don't we build something like a form engine in the backend, where we can pass all the fields that we want to show in the front end, and the front end would render it, which means that we can keep changing the fields and it won't be hard coded in the front end. So something like this,
Okay.
there's entirely a different way of talking and understanding of. So you, as a PM, you thought long term that, what if the fields change. If it is all in the front end, you would require an app release. But if it's in the back end and UI is good enough to render whatever is coming from the back end, then things just work out and you can have a faster release of the feature.
Awesome, 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 awesome. Maybe just one more question from my side, then we'll jump into the chat section. But like we spoke about the good things and your excitement for product management, your passion, and some different things that you've done to get in. What are some challenges that you faced truly as a APM or a PM? What are some challenges that you faced in the industry so far?
So, I mean, when you start as a product manager, you have a completely different idea of the field. You feel that you're okay, it will all be good and jolly. I'll shift features, I'll build, nice features. I'll do a lot on the design part, and you have a lot of assumptions and biases that things should be in a way because I read that in a book, hence it should be in this way. But when you actually start as a PM, it's overwhelming because you have so much of information consumed from so many places, but you don't know how to use it. So
True.
you have all the possible informations, but when you have to actually work on your first product, you just don't know what to do. So one suggestion here is that when this happens, when you're early in your career, just get comfortable with not knowing things. It's okay to not know things. Since childhood, we have been glorifying people who know stuff. Like we respect people who know everything. So it's human nature, and it's hard for anyone to accept that okay, I don't know this. So getting comfortable with not knowing anything about the field, and then being open to learn it, being enthusiastic and trying hard to learn it from peers, because even they won't have time, so you'll have to keep pushing yourself and
Yeah.
them as well to help you out. So taking help and asking questions is very important. Asking
Yeah.
questions should be always important, like throughout your career, but taking help is really really important, I feel.
Fair point. Yeah, I concur with you there. I think that's super important. Um, I think we won't be able to cover all the questions, but I'll just pick up 2-3 questions from the chat section. One that I like is a PM's role is pretty hectic. What are some specific things that you do to become better at product management? So, any resources that you'd like to share, or apart from work hours, are there anything that you do?
So I slightly disagree. PM's role is not hectic if you are organized. If you so, if you take
What are
reg.
your work hours like at Bounce?
So it depends. I mean, on
Okay, I was kidding.
the
Just
release,
yeah.
if there is a release approaching, it's long. Usually, it's
Okay.
like I get work-life balance at Bounce, so yeah, it's not
Need
that.
to tell Vivek to give you some more work then. I was just kidding. Yeah. Please go ahead.
So yeah, like I was saying that if you are organized, if you take notes, if you have your personal Kanban board where you maintain things you are supposed to do, what you are. If you plan your day ahead, basically, you know what you have to look forward to the next day. I mean, that works and that makes you effective, so you can finish up all the things in the given time, in the expected time. So it's not actually that hectic. So yeah, like I keep my work organized in Notion. I maintain a personal Kanban board where I keep moving things as I progress on them and keep making a backlog of the things I have to do. Because yeah, I agree that one thing that started happening to me in Bounce when I joined, I started getting a lot of emails. Like there used to be 100 emails in a single day because of the team I was working with. So the interactions were pretty high. So being able to reply to so many emails was very hard. But
Yep.
then I started taking notes and making sure that setting up right reminders to when to approach this person or when to reply back to that person. So all those things really work. So being organized helps, but that is also something you learn with time, because initially it's all chaotic. But yeah, soon when you face the problem, you'll be able to find the solution yourself. So there are a lot of
Mm-hmm.
tools, but I usually recommend Notion because that has helped me, and it's pretty simple UI.
Mm-hmm. That's nice. That's nice. Um, a lot of questions are around breaking into PM. So I'll just bucket it into 2-3 things. Uh, any interviewing tips apart from the books that everyone knows about, apart from courses.
So even after I worked at Rapido, and I
Mm-hmm.
started interviewing again, it was not like every interview that I gave I could clear. There were rejections, and uh, rejections or the overall interview process can be very stressful because you go there with an expectation, and back of your mind you already know that product cracking a product role is hard. So
Mm-hmm.
one thing I told myself when I was interviewing, that don't go with an expectation to get selected, which sounds
Mm-hmm.
crazy. So I was going to every interview with the expectation to learn, because I know the kind of questions that are being asked will be similar to what my next interviewer may ask. So even though this interviewer might reject me, I could use this learning in the next interview I give. So that really helped. And I strategically I applied to companies where I didn't wanted to go in the beginning, and then
Okay.
later on applied to the companies where I really wanted to go, so that the first few
Nice.
companies give me an experience of how interviewing is like. Because
Nice.
Rapido was technically not an interview, like
Okay.
it was because of
Yeah.
research I was doing, I got in. So Bounce was my first job where I got in through a proper interview process. So
Nice.
yeah, so I interviewed in couple of companies earlier as
Mhm.
well before Bounce happened. So that experience gave
Yeah.
me
I
yeah.
won't ask you the names of the company, but how many such companies did you apply to? How many did you get an interview? How many offers did you get? And how many, like, if you can just share like a rough figure.
Uh, so it was around 20 companies, and four got converted. Uh,
Nice. Nice. And
three
these are all referrals, or were you applying on their websites? Were you cold emailing? How were you doing it?
I mostly approached on LinkedIn. I
Uh,
had made a document on what my career trajectory has been till now, and what brings me to the edge, and what are the achievements. So that was something which helped me. I never write long messages on LinkedIn. Either I attach a link to my personal blog, or I put a document which tells about my journey, not like a usual resume, but like a proper journey map of me. So yeah.
super, super. That's amazing. That's amazing. Um, Moving on from the interview bit, a couple of questions around certifications and courses. Do you think that really helps people jump into PM, or what are your thoughts on this?
So there are good courses around, all the so many educational sites are there. There are a couple of good courses, but a certification really doesn't help. So I mean, your source of getting knowledge could be anything. Like for me, the source of getting knowledge was talking to delivery executives. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not necessary that it's not like if you have done a course, you will get some extra points for that. I mean, if even if you haven't done the course and you know stuff, you know things,
Mm-hmm.
it works out. So basically, what people look for is, one great course which will teach them product management, or one great resource which will teach them product management. But product
Mm-hmm.
management itself is a combination of so many verticals.
Right, right, right.
You have to approach each of the verticals, break down product management into those parts, and approach all of the verticals independently, say business, tech, design. So each of them have to be approached, and a PM should have good amount of knowledge of all of the fields. So
Yeah.
you can't have one course or one certification which would help you.
Is there anything that comes to the top of your mind when you say, course, or, good resources for each of these? There are, maybe you can share it after the call, but anything that comes to your top of your mind there.
I have a very different opinion on this. I
Okay.
really feel that aspiring PMs who are not product managers shouldn't be consuming a lot of information, from. So there are these famous books, Decode and Conquer, Mom Test.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Hmm.
these are amazing books, but they are irrelevant if you are not a product manager. Like you will consume so many information, but you won't be able to connect the dots. So you have so much
Hmm.
of information, but you don't know what to do with it. And what
Hmm.
would be very discouraging that in spite of reading all these things, you were not able to crack the role. So
Hmm.
I generally don't recommend any resources. They set a perspective, they give direction, but they don't make you understand the real problem or help you think in a structured manner. The
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So then maybe let me rephrase that. If you were to look for another job, okay, you're not looking, but hypothetically, if you were to look for something else, what would Aditi do today? How would she go about? Would you know?
Okay, so this is keeping in mind that I have already two work experiences. So
Hmm. Okay.
if
Let,
say if
let's let's break that down then. Maybe say if Aditi was didn't have any experience, she was graduating, and maybe she didn't have that idea of following delivery boys, but she wanted a product role in say 2 months from now or a month from now, and you don't have any experience. Let's break that. And now, okay, now that you have a year and a half experience, how would you go about? Let's break that into two things.
okay, so currently I'm working in mobility. Let's say I want to switch to fintech, for
Hmm.
example,
Hmm.
and I know nothing about fintech.
Hmm.
And so now the first thing I would do that develop a genuine interest in fintech, because then there is no motivation to switch my role, right? So the
Right.
first step is developing motivation. And how do you build motivation? The first thing is that you start learning about the field, you understand, and then you try to become good at it. So that is
Mhm,
something which brings an intrinsic motivation within you.
mhm,
So I would do everything, every kind of research in the fintech industry. Now, if it's a B2B fintech industry, then I would go and talk to the people, the business owners who are using the product of
mhm,
whatever current product is there in the market. If it's a
mhm,
B2C industry, I would talk to, my friends, my peers, that, okay, are you using Phone Pay? Are you using Google Pay? Why? Which one is your preferred choice and why? I
mhm,
mean,
mhm.
if there could be one magical feature in this product, what would it be for you? Like, what are the things you want? So
Mhm.
talking to your circle, usually our conversations don't go in these directions. So talking to your peers and understanding, how they feel about the product, in fact using the product yourself, so these things would help. So
Right.
once I get a perspective
Mhm.
about how the industry looks like, I would have some kind of choice on what side I want to go, say it's B2B or B2C, and I'll start applying to relevant companies. And since I've done my homework, I've done my research, when I tell them that I'm interested, it won't sound fake. It will be as real
Amazing.
as it is supposed to be. So,
Awesome.
doing the hard work, doing your homework, researching about the field is very important.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So yeah, that's a fair point. So, you know, take some time out rather than general spraying your application everywhere. You're saying, take your time, build some interest, go with some kind of a research. So at least, people, your chances are much better than people who are just
Right,
applying. So
right. So there's this there's this phrase which we keep saying that customization is greater than
yeah,
generalization. You have
yeah.
to treat your interviewer or the company you are applying to as your customer. And when you
Mm-hmm.
are interviewing, you have to delight them. You have to show genuine interest, and that when you have done so much of research and you develop a genuine interest, it's
Yeah.
much easier to convince the person in front of you.
Awesome. 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 And now say switching roles now that you've been in this for about a year now. Now if you were to say, look out for another role, maybe mobility or otherwise, hypothetically, how would you go about it?
I would have the exact same approach.
Same way.
You should
Okay.
have the
Okay.
same enthusiasm when you're looking
Huh.
out for next jobs like you had when you were looking out for the first job.
Awesome.
And
Awesome.
trust me, it's fun. Like, go out there,
Mm-hmm.
talk to people. Sounds crazy at first, but just go out there and talk to random people on streets.
Amazing.
After, like, these delivery boys actually became my friends. Like, I was connected with them on WhatsApp for a while.
Free food for you. Yeah.
No free
That's
food.
right. No,
No.
I'm kidding. Just kidding. So yeah, no, fair point. It's a good point that you made. Like the same end to, and it's a great framework. I think the one that you share, if people take out some time to go about and do, I think great framework. Mm, Last question, and this one's the last question also on the chat section. Uh, what about networking and mentorship? With your fellow PMs, with seniors in the industry, how do you go about this part of it? Do you think that's important? And if it is, how do you go about it?
Okay, so yeah, networking is important because firstly, it gives you a lot of information which otherwise you would have to find through any harder ways. So networking is important. It also gives you perspective of how other people think. Don't network with the intention to get a job. Network with the
Hmm.
intention to understand how others think, how leaders in your industry are approaching problems, because most problems as a PM you would be solving, like
Hmm.
at least 70% of it would be solved problems, at least in your early stage. So
Hmm.
taking guidance and networking with an intention to learn more is important, not with an intention to get any advantage or just knowing people. Like a lot of people suggest that you should network for a job. Obviously that gives you advantage if you have
Yeah.
good people in your network, but
Yeah.
intention to network shouldn't be getting a job here.
Fair
So
point.
networking with fellow PMs. So again, product manager's role is very people oriented. You have to be a
Yeah.
person who is likable. So
True.
once you are nice and people like you, you understand, you support your team, you help your team. So I'll just give one example. So if one of my colleagues is ill and I am voluntarily asking
Stepping in.
to step in and
Yeah.
do his or her part of the work, then that is a good gesture. So, as a team, being supportive for each other, helping whenever needed, not saying things like, oh, this is not my domain, why should I interfere? But, the
Building a rapport. Yeah.
building a rapport and, working as a team.
Yep.
That thing is very important. So yeah, that's how you build
Super.
network, you become friends. Building
Yeah.
relationships is very important.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Yeah, fair point. But if you were to like network with people outside your own company, say you mentioned about, seniors in the industry who you'd want to learn from, how do you go about it?
Okay, so I have been attending a lot of meetups
Mm-hmm.
since I became a PM. I keep going to, whatever meetup is happening across the city during weekends, talk
Mm-hmm.
to other people, and also like the speaker's perspective, how they, solved a challenging problem, what approaches work for them. So all these things help, just attend conferences,
Nice.
catch up. With people on Twitter or LinkedIn. So these things
That's my
work.
favorite too. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah. So you
That's
could
awesome.
actually use Twitter for networking. So yeah.
I Kanka. I agree. I agree for sure. And yeah, if people want to catch up with you, what's the best way? Like this is probably I think there are a bunch of other questions. I'm pretty sure they will reach out to you. So how do people get in touch with Aditi?
I'm active both on LinkedIn and Twitter. So feel free
Okay.
to connect at both
Awesome.
places. I also
Awesome.
have started scheduling one-on-one sessions with people who are interested in PM every
Mm-hmm.
weekend. So
Mm-hmm.
I can share my Calendly link if
Okay.
anybody wants to book a slot.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Let's please do hit that up in the chat section. And I personally enjoyed this conversation. I think we can definitely go in deeper. But thank you so much for joining us, Aditi. And if you guys love the conversation too, please feel free to give her a shout out. I think she shared a lot of relevant points. It was super concise, and we'll be putting out a recording soon. So in case you guys want to, in case you guys want to catch up on some of these points again, feel free to reach out. And if you guys could help you in any way, you have our handles. So yeah, that's
It was
about it.
great to us. Thank you for having me here.
Thanks so much for joining us, and stay safe, everyone.
Yeah.
Cheers.